Hey, I'm Josh Dillon. So, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. Before we jump into the next podcast, I just want to take a quick moment to explain to you why we started the Creatre Cast. 4 years ago, I founded a company with the goal of connecting Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. Over time, we realized that this challenge was a lot greater than what we had expected. In order for us to achieve this vision, it required something extremely important: community. It takes a village. That's why we started the Creatre Cast, to create a space where we can interview and profile the members of our community and share how they are connecting themselves to the economy and others too. So that's how the Creatre Cast became a thing. We made this podcast with the hope of illuminating what is possible for our people and inspiring you to join the African wave yourself. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what this vision is, but I'm going to tell you at the end of the podcast, and I'm going to let you know how you can get involved too. Until then, let's hop onto the wave. Let's start this journey of elevating Africa. It's a pleasure having you here. Let's get into it. Oh, welcome, Elijah. It's an absolute pleasure having you on the Creatre Cast. I think before we get into the whole conversation and discussion and just hearing a little bit more about your story, I wanted to just give anyone who might not know who you are a little bit of a quick intro. So I know you've had quite an encapsulating career, starting out in the music production space, sound design and mix engineering, and now you currently have the role of CEO at DP Interactive, which is a company that we're going to find out a lot more about as we go on in this discussion. And yeah, I just wanted to start off by just kind of asking you a little bit about how you transitioned from audio to visual, because you and I met when you were here in South Africa, busy shooting a documentary for the UN, which is a very interesting way to meet. But I did a little bit of research behind the scenes, and I see that you've got quite a strong background in the audio space. And I think the fact that you've kind of transitioned from audio to visual, it's kind of a representation of your ability to adapt and adjust to industry needs. And I think that skill and that quality has never been more needed today in the rapid world that we live in, that's constantly changing and evolving with technology literally taking strides in front of us as we watch. So I wanted to find out a little bit more about your beginnings. How did you go from audio to visual? Where did you learn this ability to adapt? And yeah, hear a little bit more about your passion for Africa and connecting with Africa.
Sure. So, my history, when I look back, my early humble beginnings were most likely my father's a pastor. And it always starts. My dad he actually is a guitarist, and he kind of trained us up as musicians in terms of me and my brothers. And so it started with that, us in the church playing back and forth, and then I got more interested into the technology aspect, the tech version of the knowledge, and pretty much it started in that phase, and the fact that you actually researched me to figure out, the whole production and music stuff is very interesting, because I had a different name. It was basically my name was Elijah Double Portion Lewis. And so, back in the day, it was like you always had this producer name and you put this thing in the middle of it. So yeah, the fact that you found that, man, you're a good researcher. So so I mean, there's a vast number of projects that I worked on, but from my humble beginnings, music was always the core of who we were, like and who I am as a person. I actually studied choral music in high school, and also took some band stuff here and there. So my life has been filled with music starting off. And as tech began to grow, and I've always been like a technical, logical person, period. From an infrastructure standpoint, I've always loved tech stuff. So just one of the guys that, kind of like a nerdy guy. And then some of my history also is coming from Mississippi, and Mississippi is a very rural area. And so you had to really be plugged in to actually figure out what kind of things that you wanted to do. So I found myself building projects like, radios and doing like rockets, like shooting up rockets and stuff. It was all kind of tech stuff that I was doing. It was like, what is this guy doing? He's in Mississippi, and I was. They had this thing called 4-H Club, which is basically like a camp where you go and you take your stuff to the fair and you would get rewarded for that. So I won a lot of those awards for tech stuff as I was growing up, and so that's kind of like the background. That's the foundation of the tech side. And the tech side always, I became technically a musician because even when I started to play, I was playing by ear, but I also knew how to play by notes and everything by reading the music. But I preferred the ear version of it. And so I became such a tech in that area too, because I started figuring out different systems that I could use in order to play. So I would listen at a bunch of different type of patterns in terms of music, and I would say, "Oh, this pattern goes with this," and so that particular language begins to transfer over into where I'm at today, which is the visual aspect. And I'll give you more insight of how I got to the visual aspect. But on the music side, I mean, sound design.
Before you jump into that, Elijah, I think because I still have more questions about the audio space. Like, I feel like there's so much to.
Okay, let's go. I love it.
Always wondering.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I was always wondering what DP stood for. I now know that it stands for double portion, I assume. So that's where double DP interactive came from.
Yeah, it came from that. And, in the biblical side, it's always my name being Elijah. I'm actually my dad's. I'm named after my father, which is his name is Elijah Lewis Senior, and I'm Elijah Lewis Junior. So, and Elijah was the one that carried the double portion in the religious aspect of the Bible. He carried the double portion. So I looked at, well, I have a double portion of this, so I can extend this other thing out. And so to me, the first portion was the music, and the second portion is the video. So within that, that's how I see it. And see, even when you say DP, you say double portion, you say digital photographer, you say DOP, you say digital pastor. That's another thing I got to unpack too. So it's all of these names that have came out of this as I go on this journey. So yeah, we can get deeper into it. I can give you some more insight about the musical side, and we can break that down, unpack that.
Yeah, so you spoke a lot about your music side, and I actually see why you and I get along well. It's because I also come from a music background, so not quite as in depth as your background, but I used to be a DJ in school, and that's how my whole entrepreneurial journey started. Because so I invested in going on a course where they taught us how to mix music. So I learned the basics of music theory in terms of your beats and your bars, etc., etc. And from that's where the whole entrepreneurial space came from. And I also had a name back in the day. It was MK2. So yours was DP, mine was MK2. And the way that name came about was the guy that taught me how to DJ, his name was Clive Bean. And we were using CDJs back in the day, but there was a more advanced course where they were using turntables. And he showed me one of the turntables that they had there. And I was young. I was probably about maybe 13 or 14 years old. And he made this he gave me the super special experience of seeing one of his most prized positions, which was a turntable. And it was a Pioneer turntable. And I remember on it, it had MK2, and it was the second version of it. So it obviously Mark II. And I remember when I saw that MK2, I was like, no, this is the name that I need to go by. So it was really cool hearing your background and your history in terms of where your name came from, because there's so much behind that, and you don't realize it at face value. And that's why I wanted us to go a little bit more into the audio side of things, because we're talking about audio.
Oh, it's the foundation.
We kind of
definitely,
we're looking at it from face value. Meanwhile, if we dig deep into it, few people that are watching this might not know this, but you have experience working with renowned artists like Mary J. Blige, Lady Gaga. Like, what has your experience been like working with such high-end artists, and what kind of lessons have you taken away from that? There's many people watching this that would aspire to be on that level, and would like to learn the steps of how to get there. I think some of the lessons and unpacking that experience could be very, very beneficial for them to hear.
Well, one thing I say about that particular subject matter is relationships. As you know, relationships are based on needs. So most of my relationships that I've had throughout life has just, you know, went from one thing to the other thing. So how I got to those projects and how I was able to do those things were through relationships. You know, yeah, you have to be talented, number one. You have to be excellent, number two. But there's building great relationship with people, and as they grow, you grow. And that's really the thing I would say to take home, because you can be the best person hidden somewhere, but if you haven't created any relationship with anybody, then you're going to be stuck in that area. Yeah. And so on the technical side of when I look at like you asked a question about how did I really get into the music, and when you think about frequencies and you think about, I've studied as a engineer and understanding like, you know, how to mix and all that. So if you think about frequency, frequency actually is the sound at the base level. It's like that's the frequency of things. And as you got all these different frequencies and you go up the scale, you start to get into different hertz and gigahertz and kilohertz. Then you get into gamma rays. And so as you get higher and higher into the frequencies, music actually turns into visual. And so that's how I made it to visual, because I started out, you know, producing music and doing a lot of gospel stuff, but I used one specialty skill to get me on the level into those projects, and it was just a need that people needed, and it was called sound design. And then I had a name for that. It was like this little guy with a couple uh uh, chemical canisters doing like this, and it was like the guy. It was called the FX Kid. So I had this another little cartoon thing that I did. So when I did music, I had this other thing, and then I had this for when I would do that. So it was amazing, man. So the journey been great, and so even in that, so to unpack some of the FX Kid stuff, I would create these crazy soundscapes and these visual, not visuals, but audio pieces that actually turned into visuals later. So I could hear something and see it at the same time. So I created the base for that. And I'll play, you know, maybe I play something not now, but you know, you can put it in there just to show you what I mean by that. It was some shows. So what happened was I started doing shows, which is the intros for different shows. And so in the early 2000s, it wasn't a lot of visuals going on because tech was kind of just coming in, but I had this ability to create these soundscapes that gives you visuals with the sound design and intros, which I'll play something like I say for you so you can listen to it. And it was almost like a movie soundscape that builds up, and then now the whole concert start. So that's how I got into, you know, I did sound design for Lady Gaga for her Monster Ball HBO tour. So it was like probably the biggest thing. It's like the end of her whole concerts. Like, I'm gonna do these last few cities, and so I got called in. And normally what I do, I go in and I set up the structure of what I want to do in the sound design. And working with my friend Joe Wilson, he was actually the music director. Him and and Lorianne Gibson. And so they was the creative director and the music director for the whole thing. So they brought me in to do that. And you know, I come in and I'll do that, and then I'll just leave. And then the tour goes on. So usually I'll start the tour and make sure everything is good, and then they take it on and do what they have to do. And also I did that with the Cheetah Girls too from Disney. They was on their last tour, and I came in and did what we call those little inserts of the segues in between to make the whole show work glue together. So I mean, it's been a journey, you know what I'm saying? But on it, like those are just things that I've done. So let's get a little more technical into it. So if you ever heard of granular synthesis, when the Matrix came out, the movie The Matrix, it was so much sound design that kind of got me interested in like what is all this stuff they're doing. So I found this plugin called MetaSynth. And what MetaSynth was, it was a plugin that actually you can put a picture inside of this plugin, and it would spit back out what that picture from a sound version, what it would be like. And so I found out that that's what Matrix was doing. And And so I got into that world, granular synthesis. And then there was this other device called Kima. Kima. It was a Kima. Kima was this it was a hardware piece that that you can, in today's time everything you do with computers, but in the early 2000s it wasn't fast enough. So you had to have units. It was separate things that you had to have. So I was very interested in that. And I actually created a from my hometown. My hometown is called Natchez. And so Natchez sits on the river of Mississippi River. And I went back home and I designed a sound design kit for that. And I've done a lot of work that's in the background that's been buried. I'm the guy behind the scenes. Nobody really know, but as I progress into the visual aspect, I'm starting to get more presence into that world. I actually never looked into being upfront like that, but now it seems like this is the other part of the season. The double portion has 2 seasons. So this other season is coming to take all the things that I've done and actually flip that into the visual aspect where people can see it and hear. So they're gonna, I call it see, hear, and feel, the 3D experience. So that's kind of like that. That's kind of a breakdown of the audio side of me, which is just
Yeah.
pop in on any question, because I got a lot of layers to it, so I can peel back the onion.
Yeah. I mean, from while you're speaking, I'm listening to all these things you're saying and I'm seeing how they all interlink with one another. And I find that really fascinating. So at the end of the day, if you're talking audio or visual, at the end of the day, the purpose is communication. And when I think of communication, I think of the transfer of energy. And you were talking about sound waves and how that's energy and how when you go up the spectrum, it becomes light waves. And that's also another form of energy. And it's really fascinating to hear your story. But what I'm getting from it is that there's this common thread of communicating and transferring energy, whether it be through audio or whether it be through visual. There's this transfer happening. And that's such a beautiful thing to think about. And I'm sure that we'll see this pattern as we go along. I mean, also coming back to what you're mentioning about patterns, music is such a mathematical thing. So the fact that you've got the technical side and then you've also got the artistic side, those things overlap one another. You start to identify patterns in the music. You start to identify patterns in visual. You start to learn about concepts like contrast, for example, where one side might be really light and one side might be very dark, and putting them together emphasizes one thing or the other. So all of these things are really, it's really cool to unpack them, and it really showcases your deep knowledge in terms of these, what I want to call like laws of communication, if we want to call it something like that. And I think, like you mentioned, that whole concept of being good is one aspect, but also knowing the right people, building relationships, offering value. And, like that's how we met, you were here shooting, you needed to have someone who could show you around South Africa. And I could see that. And now fast forward later down the line, we're here having this podcast talking about sharing these experiences and we're sitting here and I'm learning a lot from what you're saying. None of that would have been possible unless we had built that relationship. So it's really cool to tie all these things together. I wonder if you could maybe explain a little bit about the impact of being Emmy nominated, right? In the PBS American Graduate Program. What kind of impact did that have on your career? Did you learn a lot of these concepts from that? What was the impact of that?
Well, I honestly can say that none of the accolades that I actually have were such a hard thing to get in terms of when I say that I'm referring to like I did a lot of hard work, but it seemed like it was just on the trail. It was on the horizon. To every time I did something, it just seemed like it'll pop up like, oh, and then this will happen. It was never like something that I was pursuing. I had no pursuit towards accolades and things of that nature. It was always just all of a sudden, the American Graduate Story with PBS, that was something that I was nominated for. Seems like every time I put my hand on something, it gets turns to something. And so that happened, and then there was a nomination, and then I got nominated again. But after that, I ended up actually winning an Emmy. I actually won one for, actually I worked for an agency, which is Daniel Bryan Associates, and then we did some commercials for the Super Bowl. And during that time, one of them got nominated, and we actually won an Emmy for it. So it was on the road. So it's like I never even thought about that, but it happened. And so when people just all you have to do, just don't stop. Do not stop. If you tend to you have a career, you say, well, sometimes you may switch lanes, but just don't stop moving. And so if I would have stopped, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. And I'm still on the journey. I mean, there's so much to unpack. Like I say, this is the second part of my life I see where the other portion is coming to reestablish what it's going to be a combination of everything, that I've been doing. So it's almost like when you build a super high skyscraper, people don't know how deep the roots of that skyscraper is in the ground. It's just as deep as how high. So really, people just seeing me come out. I'm on the surface now, but been grinding, and I've been doing this a long, really, really long time in terms of making things happen. And most of my friends know me. It's all related. But back to what I was saying, I'm super excited about what's coming. You know what I'm saying? What's coming. And if I was to give people some pointers of in their career, what they need to do, just don't never stop. You know what I'm saying? Never stop. Keep building relationships. The new world, which is the technological world, kind of keeps you from actually meeting people face to face. I don't think me and you would have connected just meeting on the internet right now. I think it was my presence there, because you have five senses. So when you show up and you have all of your five senses are working, and you get around somebody, the connection happens faster. And so we have to use use our physical connections to actually. And sometimes you can't be all around the world, but I'm just saying, like, our connection is based on that we had a physical experience and we connected that way. And here we go. We on a podcast talking about it. You would have never known I was even in the world. I would have never known you was in the world. But we made some efforts to say it was a need that needed to be met. And I asked you, and you said, "Oh man, yeah, sure." And here we go. And we back at it, and it's a lot of great things that's coming. There's going to even be coming. I won't be able to reveal a lot of it, but I guarantee you're going to see a lot of things, a lot of transaction happen between here and the motherland, in terms of even South Africa and even other countries inside of Africa that we probably going to be stepping on the soil. So,
yeah. What you're saying about the senses, coming back to that whole idea of transfer of energy, each of those senses is kind of what I view as a different connection point. And the more connection points you can touch on, the easier it is for that transfer of energy to happen. And just coming back to also what you were saying in terms of persistency and consistency is the key to achievement, right? Couldn't agree more with you. As you go along, every step that you take is a stepping stone to the next thing. And every adversity that you come across is equipping you with the tools that you need to achieve what you are put on this earth to achieve. And I think it's very challenging to stay persistent and consistent, right? Because things get hard, things go wrong. I mean, being someone who's working on multiple sets, you'll know that it doesn't matter how much you plan for it. When you hop on that set, something is going to go wrong. There's going to be some sort of curveball that comes your way. And what matters is your way of adapting and adjusting to it. And I think keeping motivated and keeping inspired enough to stay persistent and consistent is key. And a lot of the time people come to me and they ask me, how do you stay motivated? How do you keep doing whatever it is that you're doing? And I always tell them, you're asking the wrong question. It's not about how. How do you do that? It's about why. Why do you do that? Because when you unpack the why, it gives that meaning, and you'll figure out the how, because the how is always going to change. But the why is the one thing that needs to remain consistent. And I think one of the huge elements that comes with that why is your passion. That's where a lot of people find their why. So I wanted to ask you about your passion. What would you define as your why? And I also want us to go a little bit more into your passion projects. I know that we met while you were working on this UN documentary. So I wanted to ask you a little bit of how that why ties into the reason why you were shooting here in South Africa. Why is this documentary happening in the first place?
Actually, it was based around, it actually wasn't necessarily a documentary at first. It was more research for something that's coming. And so, and I want to unpack the first thing you said about about passion. So you cannot have passion at all unless you have a purpose. Purpose is the beginning of anything. So purpose mean like if you have a car, what's the purpose of a car? The purpose of the car to drive it. So and put some gas in it. So it's the same scenario. You have to find out what is the purpose of this of what you're doing or who you are as a person. Then you can get excited about it, and then passion comes. And when passion comes, it creates inspiration. And then after inspiration, you have influence. So you cannot have that's the order of the creativity. It's like first purpose, passion, inspiration, and then influence after that. So those four are the road to getting people around you or getting people excited about something. Because if you notice, if you're not passionate about nothing, no one will even come around you. Because that's where you start to inspire because you say, man, this guy's so passionate. Now you're inspiring somebody. Now after inspiration, you got influence, So back to unpacking that, that's what I feel a lot of creatives are missing. They're just trying to jump into the passion aspect, but you cannot have passion until you know what it is that you're doing. So yeah. And so let's jump back over to why I was there. I first number one, I was on search for myself in terms of not myself, my family. We had been talking for such a long time to come back to the motherland and actually so we did some DNA stuff and we found out that we was a member in terms of the tribal side of it. It stemmed back to this tribe called the Limba tribe. And it was, but Limba, I think it made some parts in South Africa, some parts different places. So it kind of led me there. So we were on the journey to, go there and visit and see what it was about. And once I once I moved forward and saying that I wanted to do that, then I made a few calls and it was just kind of spontaneous and it happened like boom. Then next thing we looked up, one of my friends called me and said, hey, she actually the one that kind of put the UN, it's called the UN Association. So UN Association, she put this together and just set this up for me to meet one of the Queen of Free State, which is in the Bantu. And so I visited there and they gave me the homecoming that I always wanted, when I came to Africa. And they gave me that. And my experience with it was so emotional. And so it was two things going on. I'm visiting for this, but I'm also researching this. It was for basically for film and agriculture. Hold on a second, let me pull it up a little bit. Yep. So basically it was for gender equality, which is, women seem to be in Africa having problems with jobs and stuff like that. So gender equality and rural research in terms of agro business and stuff like that, growing products and things of that nature. So it was a lot of things tied into it. And then while I was there, I was able to meet other philanthropists and business owners like the Collin brothers. They were there and we were able to. So it's a lot of stuff brewing. Once I arrived, it kind of glued some other people together. So it brought people together, just like me and you together. And then some other people we met, like you met other people that you would have never known. And the same thing so building a relationship, what it's all about. And so I really believe that in the future, what we're looking for in terms of what people have been saying about African Americans, saying that we have no connection to Africa or whatever, I think that I'm going to be not the first, but I'm going to be one of the people that prove that wrong because we've already started a process. And it's going to, I think we're going to just build a whole community around that. It's going to be people, it's going to be business. And in terms of me coming there, I was fulfilled in every way. You know what I'm saying? In every aspect of me being a musician, I was fulfilled being a creative and being an entrepreneur, all these areas that I had to do in America. I'm actually, there's a place for me there too. And that's what I'm actually saying, like, okay, there's a place for me there. There's also a place for you here. And so that's where we talk about building the bridges and connecting the dots and all that stuff. What is the golden thread? We talked about a lot of things in some of these interviews. And coming in the future, we'll probably have another podcast where I really reveal what would have came out of all of that in terms of like, a series or, it's bigger than what, just collecting some information now. It's going to be a lot bigger process than what we see. So.
Yeah. And tying it into that framework that you gave us, purpose, passion, inspiration, influence. I think that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to speak to you today, was because I feel like we've identified a purpose. We just talking about it, you can hear the passion behind it. Um, the next step is to inspire people. And that's why we need to record these conversations and put it out there, because it gives people the perspective in terms of how literally your dreams are possible. The fact that I, just the random guy in Johannesburg, South Africa, was able to come across you who's working on such amazing things, has gone through so many experiences. If I can do that, someone else can also do that. It's just about being in the right place, building the right relationships. And my hope is that through this conversation, we can inspire people. And then the next step is those people that watch this and become inspired. There's also a responsibility that comes with that. Is how do we make that, how do we pass that forward to the next person? And how do we start creating this level of influence within this community that we're building? And I think that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to speak to you today. And just from what you're saying now, there's, like you mentioned, there's a lot of things brewing. I can see how community is a huge important factor in making that vision become a reality. And that's what we're doing here, is we're building that community. So for anyone who's watching, who's a part of this community, who feels inspired, can identify the passion, and has a sense of the vision, what current ventures, I know you've got a lot of things under wrap, but I have to ask the question. What kind of ventures are brewing? I don't know if you're able to share any of those things, or maybe just give us a little bit of a taste of what we can expect. I think that's important that we share that, and gives people sort of a reason to listen to this.
Well, I would say that some of the framework that I'm working on is to create what's there here and what's here there, because it's just really about me and you and whoever else is involved, um, cross pollinating, saying like, oh, what can I put that there, and export import basically, and not just mining. Everybody thinks of Africa like we're just gonna go and mine everything out and make a lot of money. That's not my goal. My goal is to think of more of a export type thing, like from Africa. What is currently there that we can export out, so we can get the resources, because Africa has vast resources in terms of people. We're not just talking about minerals and stuff. We talk about people and knowledge. And I think the biggest thing is the transfer of knowledge, like and the back and forth between each other, how we can translate to each other. I think of it as like an ambidexter. Me being a musician, I'm playing with this hand, playing with this hand, and knowledge is like that. If you can explain it, it's like ambidexter over here. I can use this. This is a language that I don't know, but I do know this. I mastered it, so I can just come over here and just kind of figure it out over here. So I see Africa like that. It's the roots are deep in me, because I understand that the roots are running deep. So I would say, from a framework standpoint, I'm looking to build. I'm looking to build relationships with people. I'm looking to grow a business, collaborations, back and forth in terms of whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's commercials, whether it's art, and also, in the agriculture business too. So I'm not heavy in that, but I do have relationships with that I can connect people with. So those are basically sustainable things that can be sustained. In today's time, we're kind of getting ourselves plugged into this vortex of things, but sustainable things, things that that's more holistic in that vein. So I would say, like I say, music wise, I'm looking to collaborate. So any producers out there that want to collaborate with music, let me know. I know some of the top guys here in the US that you can make some collaborations with, or any artists that want to do that. I know a lot of people that's looking to do that too. So maybe create some type of hub, a creative hub, that we can start translating back and forth and plugging right into each other. A lot of people, they're not up for this, but I'm up for it. And I'm very inspirational, so I can, inspire people to do it. So that's one aspect. And on the film side, I'm definitely going to be bringing the core of what I want, my story, back there, to actually create some type of series of on the actual continent, that it can be ongoing for quite a while. So that would be needing I'm not willing to, or either actually looking to like bring a bunch of people over to help me to do that. I'm looking to actually use the people that's there and maybe collaborate with them and train, or and they train me. It's not like me, I don't know everything. So we just collaborate together to create these things. So I'm not closed minded. So I want to actually build things with people, like build bridges. Like you on the other side, you it's like hello, purpose meet passion. You know, that's one side of the bridge, and here's your destiny on the other side. When you build it together, a bridge is built from one side to the other. You know, one part up to this point, and then you connect them. So I'm looking to do those things, and this already has started. This has actually started. This is not like something that we about to do. And actually you need to do things and get the word out there and collect the people that need to be collected in terms of this community. So I would say, I don't know if I dialed in tight enough, or I was too vague or whatever, but I'm trying to say everything. But I want to say, you know, I don't want to give total detail, but I'm saying like when you get to meet me and meet me in person, I'll tell you everything. But you know, with certain platforms for in terms of intellectual property and different things, I tend to not say all the detail of things until it's actually completed. And I'm more engineering minded. By the time you see it, it's 10 years old. So whatever I've been working on, I've been working on it quite a while.
100%. I mean, you didn't even have to dive into details. I'm already feeling inspired and influenced by what you have to say. Um, and I know that there's things brewing in the background. I'm not going to mention them because I don't know if it's stuff that's ready to be shared, but there definitely are things, and I'm keen to hear more about that. And we will start to see those things unfold over time. And coming back to the discussion of passion, right? I mean, something that I've kind of gotten from what you're saying is something that's very important to you is the concept of connecting to your roots, connecting to where you come from. And something that you mentioned now as well is that a metaphor that you used of building a bridge. It gets built from both sides. So my hope is that this podcast isn't just for our side of the bridge. I would like it to also be for your side of the bridge. So how would you say, what are your thoughts, and what do you think where the importance lies of African Americans connecting with their African roots? What would you have for that audience who might be listening to this podcast?
Well, first of all, you have to get a call, and the call is deep within. You know, the roots are the call comes from within yourself, um, knowing that you need to do that. And when I stepped foot on the continent, me and my sister, um, it was like my first. I was doing it not just for myself. I was doing it for everybody that was before me. And so it's much deeper conversation about that. But for the people that need to hear this, you have to make the journey. I mean, it seems to be such expensive journey to go there, but you have to make the journey, because what you will find out is that it's a spiritual thing. You need to do it in terms of it helps you to understand like why you in the situation you're in, or it just kind of eases your anxiety of all the things that's been going on. You just realize like, wow, this is where I'm from. I was taken from this soil. You know what I'm saying? This soil is who I am. You know, if you really think about people as a human, if we were made from the dust of the earth, we was made from that dust of the earth, that dust on that soil. And so even if you take different dust and you spread it in different regions, yeah, you can adapt to it, but it mostly fit in that particular area where that soil come from. And so from my perspective, that's what I found out. And my alignment of who I am, a lot of things that I'm trying to do. That's why when I came there, everything just fit very well. I was able to get on. I went on a set to see behind the scenes with Gamora. I met some great people. You know, it was just so many things happened that it just aligned me with. It's almost like I would call it a parallel universe. It's like what I'm doing here is the same thing I'm doing there, but in another way. And so, um, you back? Okay. Yeah, it was. It went off. But yeah, so I kind of view it. That's the way I kind of view it, as like a parallel universe where you literally can be doing something else with the same thing that you're doing here. You could be doing there in another way. But or another level or in another dimension. So I experienced that, you know, and that's what I tell my African American brothers and sisters. Please make the journey. You know what I'm saying? Please make the journey because don't be afraid. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, everything this is happening, you know, the propaganda of this and that. Just get on the plane and visit. First of all, South Africa is probably the closest thing that you know in terms of America. So you should just take that trip first because it's not going to be some culture shock to you. It's going to be just like here, but just you know, it's just a different place. It's a different atmosphere. So take the journey, you know, and you're gonna have the things that everybody talk about. But if you focus on that, then that's what you get. You know, I focus on the best part of everything. I'm very I look at things very I look forward to greatness and things. I met so many great people just even just in conversation, walking past somebody, I talk to someone and they'll direct me to the exact same thing that I wanted to do. It was such a connecting journey for me. So that's why I know that I'm needed there, and I know that people that I met there are needed here because connections work both ways.
Yeah, I'm so excited to explore it. Just as you're speaking, I'm literally getting like goosebumps just thinking about the things that are going to come from this. This second portion that we're talking about here. Um, we have a rolling joke in South Africa where we talk about how when we meet American people, we tell them about how we have back lions in our backyards because of the way that Africa is portrayed that side. We've also heard jokes about people coming to South Africa with machetes because they expect to be in the bundus, what we would call the bundus. Um, but yeah, from your experience coming here, what would you say have been any specific cultural aspects that have kind of deeply affected you? If we can explore that a little bit more deeply, please.
Unpack what you said a little bit more, like cultural aspects. What do you mean, like specifically or specific, like we said, cultural aspect?
Yeah. So just to like what when you were here, and you were looking for different places to see, something that was very important for me was to show you the duality of South Africa, because not everyone in South Africa has the opportunity to go abroad, right? So because I have a somewhat similar situation. So I'm actually Portuguese, right? I was born and raised in South Africa, so I am identify as South African. I am more South African than I am Portuguese because that's what I know. But I know that I have Portuguese blood within me. I have family that stays in Portugal. So for me, I needed to go to Portugal, and I also feel like at some points in my life, I need to live in Portugal for a while because I need to be able to understand that part of my identity. Um, One thing about most South Africans is a lot of South Africans haven't had the opportunity to travel and go abroad. And that changes our perspective on things because we have things in South Africa like load shedding, which is rolling power cuts. We have things like crime, we have corruption, etc., etc. And we also have great things. We have like amazing scenery. We have phenomenal weather. We have, so all of these things exist in a duality, right? But something that I can say for certain is that when you go abroad as a South African, it opens your mind up to so many different aspects of what is possible. You see situations or different communities where there's not much crime, or gender-based violence isn't a thing in Portugal, for example. When I went there last year, I went out with my cousin. We went to a bar. We got home a bit late at about 2 a.m. in the morning. And as we were in the Uber going home, you would see girls walking on the street by themselves. And that was such a jarring experience for me because when I would see girls in the street walking alone at that time, my natural instinct is to stop the car and ask them if they're okay, if they need help. Because we come from South Africa, where if you see a girl walking the streets in the middle of Joburg CBD, you know that that person's in trouble because of the gender-based violence issues that we have. So that's an example of like a deep rooted like thing that I noticed going abroad. I don't know if you had any similar experiences when you were here in South Africa.
I visited Soweto. I visited Alexander. So I can me, you know, coming from Mississippi, which is a rural area, you know, they call it country, and so that's one aspect. Then going to living in a place like Detroit, which is more urban, and then actually living in Washington, D.C. before, and also living in a place called Ann Arbor, which is basically, those are all totally different places. But within that, you can go into different communities and see what's going on. You know what I'm saying? In terms of like economics, the thing that was very interesting to me, I went to Alexandria and I went to this cafe there, and man, it was packed out. You know what I'm saying? It's like packed out, people from everywhere, not just people from the neighborhood. And I was able to actually interview that lady, and so I'll tell more about that too. It was amazing, and actually, it was one of the things that I wanted to do. So I met somebody, and they was like, "Oh, we can go to this cafe." I was like, "What cafe?" And they say, "This one here," and I said, "Oh, that's one I wanted to go to." So it was these type of things that was happening to me, and it was amazing. I mean, the food was amazing. It was the best I had probably had. And so the food, the culture, the African culture is deeply ingrained in us, even in the US, and we carried some of those nuggets over there. So when you think about you think about me and whoever's left out of the turmoil that we went through in the US, we're the strongest. We're the strongest that's left, because the strongest people are the one that survived all of that. So when Africa look at me as an African American, remember that I'm the strongest of what have already came before us, because we're the ones that's left. And so when we connect with our African brothers and sisters, we have to understand that we have trauma. Everybody have different things, but at the end of the day, we're some of the strongest that's left. And so the cultural side of it too is I went to Bloomington and I actually seen another world that was more like laid back and more village based. So it was a lot of that going on too. So I was like, oh, and it was amazing, meeting with the royal family and everything there in the area, and they treated me with the highest respect. And we have a whole podcast about that. I'll give that whole story, and just to let you know, like it was so welcoming for me, and so I experienced such a great time. And that culture, even the food was some of the same stuff that I eat in America, but it was just a little slightly different in the cultural aspect. And I was wondering why people do this and do that. Now I realize, like, oh, this is why, because this is where it comes from. It comes from this region. And then I was able to eat anything and didn't no allergies, none of those things. It was like my body was designed to handle these things. Like most people say, well, I can't eat this food, or I can't, we bring all of these things with us, saying, hey, I'm never gonna I'm gonna have to buy this stuff when I get there, or did Africa don't have this. It's a lie. Africa got it all. They got everything that we have and even more. And that's the lie we have to unpack, because they got it. Now it may be in different regions, you go different places, you got different things, but the access, you just need to know the access of where it's at. So I would say from a cultural standpoint, man, it was such an amazing experience, and I'm still living that out right now. And when I revisit there again, coming in the future, I'm probably going to extend that even further. Build that relationship even further in terms of my cultural experiences that I had with everybody that was there. I'm just super excited about that.
No, it's true. We got everything in a bag of up chips and a quota. So yeah, okay, cool. No, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, something that I know about you, Elijah, and just from my experience working with you when you were here, is you are someone who is a problem solver. It doesn't matter what comes your way, you're going to find a way to do what needs to be done, right? And I just wanted to check with you and ask you a question. Out of your extensive career, all of the experiences that you have from South Africa, you mentioned that you have experience in various different cities across the States. You've worked with many different artists. You've worked on many different projects. Out of all of the projects that you have done, which one would you say is the one that solidified that skill of being a problem solver? Or kind of when you look back at it, you're like, that's when I mastered that skill of problem solving. And Yeah, I just wanted to ask you to reflect on that and just kind of share a story with us where you really had to innovate or be super creative just to solve a problem.
Yeah, ooh, man, that's a heavy weight. I mean, because I'm you're right. I'm definitely a problem solver. I'm trying to think of one project that I would say that I have a lot of challenges with. Hmm, well, I'll just give you some
I can give you
examples.
an idea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'll give you a quick, like basically, in the music world, you know, uh, most people know this piece of equipment called a Akai MPC. Yeah, Akai MPC 4000 or 2000. They got all these different ones. But at the time, I think I might have had the 4000. Had a hard drive on there. And man, I had worked all night. I'm working on a beat. I'm working on for a project for an artist. And man, I did this. It was hot. I mean, it was slapping. The beat was just next level. And man, and I lost it. I lost that project. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it just literally something happened with tech and it just lost. And so, and guess what? I had to realize everything that I did. I had to take everything that I did and do it again. And guess what? So the challenge was, okay, can I do it again? And guess what? I did it again and I did it better. So I've learned that if you're really working on something and you really know what you're doing, you can do it better. And I give you another scenario too. This is a good story and a kind of sad, and I had basically two studios taken from me, I mean music studios. And so I end up somebody just broke in my home and just stole everything. I'm talking about everything. And at that time, I was like this, like you guys call it social media, but I was social butterfly, letting everybody know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. Just that guy always talking about it. Just being that social guy. And so I guess with that, I end up, you know, letting everybody know where everything is. And that's why I'm such a private person now because when I had that experience, they came and took everything, but they left me two nuggets. They left me a microphone and I think it was a keyboard that was left. Um, it was such, and so I took the microphone and the keyboard and went back to Guitar Center and so traded that in to get some smaller equipment. And out of everything that I'm doing today came from that. So what I'm saying is that when you can take somebody can take everything from you and then leave you with a supplement of small thing. All you need to do is reorg that and say, well, okay, I'm going to apply this to that. So that's what I did. I applied to the things that I actually needed. And I built everything that you see today, everything from those two devices. And the crazy part about it, I went back to Guitar Center and bought my mic back after I did that. And I still got that mic today.
The same.
The same mic that, yeah. So it's like, because nobody else would buy it because they didn't even know what it was. They was like, what is this thing, man? I don't know what this. They didn't know there was a dual tube microphone that cost $3,000 or $4,000. They didn't even know. It was just like this vintage thing. Like, what is this thing? So that's one of the lessons I would say, a problem solver that I did. I just kind of like this. I had to do that, man. So those are good lessons for anyone. And you can spark me on any other thing that I probably said, early in one of our conversations, but that's one of the ones that I wanted to share.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And it comes back to that message and that mantra that you were mentioning earlier. Just keep on going. When things get tough, when things don't go right, the thing that matters is your ability to keep on going and also remaining calm. Because I had one of my editors call me up the other day. I was with some friends and he called me at about maybe 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And I answered the phone like, hey, Noble, what's up? Is everything all right? Why are you calling me so late? What's going on? And he tells me about how he was doing an engagement shoot for a client of his. And the client asked him to play music on the speaker so that he could cue the guy to propose. And he agreed to do that. So now Noble's busy walking around this location that they're shooting at, acting like a person who's not meant to be, or acting like a person who's meant to be there just chilling. And now the guy is about to propose. So he switches on the music. And while he's switching on the music, he's trying to pull out his camera and he's trying to hit record, but he's trying to get the music going. And there was just a bit of a kerfuffle that happened. And he landed up missing the moment where the guy got on his knees to propose. And he called me because he was like busy working on the edits. And he was like, dude, I missed the most important moments. I don't know what to do. I sent the video and I don't know what to do. And I feel so bad. What do I do in this situation? And we were just having a chat, and it put me in a situation where I was thinking, like, what would I do if that happened? And the reality is that you just got to roll with the punches. Like, you got to find a way to make it work, whether it be that you need to like make it a fun thing now, like, hey guys, I missed that moment, so we're going to have to spend the rest of this get together, make like reshooting that moment and making it a fun experience for them, or whatever it may be. Don't panic, just stay calm and get creative.
Into it. Yeah, you dive into it. That's a perfect example because I was on a few projects that maybe audio wasn't so good, so maybe it sounded like a phone. So you just go ahead and put it in the phone. So you have to, if it sounds horrible, make it sound even more horrible, and just put it in a filter or something. Like do something different. Like some of my best work was through mistakes, and so even in the passion world, and so I might bump something or I move something a few frames away, and you'd be like, whoa, that's kind of high. And so sometimes your ability the way your brain functions cannot perceive a lot of things. So sometimes you have to go random. You have to just hit a random button or do something random, and then it may produce something back that you actually couldn't think of at the moment. So, and stop being so hard on yourself, like, because everything is not in your brain. It's just maybe just be in some of the mistakes that comes out, what we call mistakes, but actually it's genius. You come up with genius stuff by not even thinking about it sometimes. So definitely, I agree with you on that.
Thank you for that. No, thank you for that. That really is an affirmation for me. Just the things that you're saying now. So we've had an amazing conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And we're kind of coming to the end of the podcast. I think there's one more question that I want to ask you that I think we can wrap up on. And we've spoken a lot about the whole journey that you've had from going from audio now into visual and tying these things together. We're now in the second portion, and now we're going through this journey of connecting the world to Africa and Africa to the world. What would you say you believe the future holds for Africa?
I would say Africa is the last superpower. I mean, and what I mean by that, it will be a superpower. It always has been a superpower, but in the way the system is structured and the way things have been done, it looks like it's the end. It's like this is the last thing on the list. You got the beginning, the person in the front of the line, then you got the person at the end of the line. Africa always been at the end of the line in terms of the structure of these systems, but really they are in the front of the line because they hold the resources to everything. And so I think what's the valuable part of Africa is that it will be the most innovative place. It will be the most sought after place to be in the near future. I think it's already becoming it now. I just think that people mostly are downplaying it, like, oh, Africa or whatever. No, but I think that most people are getting wind of the fact that it's gonna be the place to be. It's gonna be. I mean, after I set my foot on the soil, I've already I know that that's where it's the place to be. You know what I'm saying? You got to be there. You got to plant there. You got to plant something there. You got to watch it grow. You got to create legacy. You got to do something, whether it be through creativity or you have to, if you want your legacy to live on, you better do it in Africa. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah. If being African is your superpower. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Elijah. I've had an absolute pleasure talking to you. I feel inspired. I feel energized to take what we're talking about and bringing it into reality. And we're doing that on a daily basis. So thank you for all the things that you do. Keep on inspiring. And thank you for taking the time to share that message with us, because if we can plant that seed in someone else who's listening to this, just give it time and we will see the impact that it has. So thank you so much.
Perfect,
so
perfect,
much.
perfect. Yep. Thank you for having me on, and look forward to another one where I can reveal a lot of the secret things that we're working on. Yes, sir. Take care.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. My hope is that we have illuminated what is possible for you. My hope is that we've inspired you to start your journey of elevating Africa in the global space. It is possible. At the beginning of this podcast, I mentioned the African wave. This is it. We are creating a platform for the elevation of Africa in the global space. If you want to join this wave, but you're not too sure where to start, I'd like to encourage you to find out more about the Creatre community. Our community is founded on 3 pillars: coaching, connecting, and culture. Through these pillars, we hope to create a point of convergence for future leaders of Africa. If you are a leader and you want to be a part of this movement, please visit our website. You'll find courses of finding your online voice and see when our next networking event is coming up. We're excited for you to join our journey in connecting Africa to the digital economy. But until then, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for watching, and bye.